Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jairadha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jairadha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopijana Balava Giribharadhare Gopijana Balava Giribharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jairadha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Vishnupad Paramahangmasapar Vrajakcharis Stanislamad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Svandracharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Shri Shri Nitai Mai Chandra Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Gopremanande All glories to their Sumo devotees. All glories to their Sumo devotees. All glories to their Sumo devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yes, so. Oh, Krishna. Thank you. So, Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday afternoon program. As many of you know, it's been a busy week. It's really been. What a week and a half. Yes, but let's carry on here and focus on very important verse from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, verse 34. Right, so I'll just read the verse. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuro mam evaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam mat parayana. So the translation, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Thank you. Yeah, quite right. Actually. I mean, it's just really interesting. You know, Bhagavad Gita has so much knowledge in it. And here, the 9th chapter, this is actually the last verse in the 9th chapter. So, there are 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita. So, in other words, we're basically right in the very middle of Bhagavad Gita. And a verse like this, I mean, there are numerous verses in one way or another dealing with the same topics, more or less, as this verse. But you know what happens? Not always, but it definitely happens quite a bit with a certain type of person who is interested in this sort of subject matter, but has already a certain type of underlying attitude in their minds, kind of a perspective on the subject matter which is already, they're kind of fixed in that perspective. And that is those who are called the impersonalists. The impersonalists. And there's really a lot of them. I mean, millions of them. And they're very generally very fond of Bhagavad Gita. But they interpret the verses, and including a verse like this, definitely, they interpret it in impersonal terms. In other words, that God or the absolute truth is not a person, and we are not persons, and that, well, it culminates in the idea that God, or the absolute truth, which, they're synonyms, God and the absolute truth, that's the same thing. Like 6 or half a dozen, it's the same thing, just different words. So God, the absolute truth, they like to think is not a person. Impersonalists. Not a person. And they're rather more inclined to a particular idea that everything, this world, universe, and just everything that exists, it's all one. It's all one. I remember when I was young, I don't know who was around then, I was around then, there was a song from the Beatles, from one of their last albums. The song had the intriguing name, I Am the Walrus. Anyway, putting that aside, in the course of the song, John Lennon sings, I am you, and you are me, and we are all together. Wow, what do you think of that? Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you. Interesting idea. I am you, and you are me. And we're all together. But, there's some problems with that idea. First problem is that I am me, and you are you. And we are certainly not together in the sense of like merging and becoming a type of super entity or something like that. But rather we're individuals. We're individuals, and we are individual humans, so there's a type of oneness there where we're humans. We're all of us, we're humans, but we are different humans. So this, that's an example at least. It's not really that profound. There are people who are philosophers who really get into this sort of idea and present it in very sophisticated ways. And they can turn your mind inside out, outside in, and upside down. You get the idea. You can get confused, in other words, without any difficulty whatsoever, because they're very clever, some of them, at juggling words, playing with language. So they take even this particular verse, specific verse, and others which are very similar, or you could say similar, related ideas, and they interpret this verse or these verses in such terms as to support their idea that it's all one, that I am you and you are me, and we're all together here in Rondebosch. Well, we are all together, but not exactly together, that we've all become one. So the thing is, my point in bringing this up at this stage is that in this verse, I don't know if you counted But, I will count right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times Lord Krishna uses the word me, or my, or mainly me, 5 times me, 1 time my. In other words, and this is in 2 sentences. In other words, it's pretty clear, pretty emphatic, really, that he is talking about, well, he's talking about a person. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. This is Sanskrit, of course, but man means me. Mad means my, or can also mean me. Mam means me. Mat also means me. So there's not really much room for making the mistake of thinking that in this verse, Krishna's not talking about himself. He is trying to tell us that it's not him. It's not him, like him as an individual, but he's referring to some sort of great oneness, which is God, or, something like that. Anyway, I hope I haven't confused anyone. I think it's pretty clear, really, that Krishna is being very specific about himself and how we, or how people, should relate with him and understand him and see him and, like this, interact with him. Okay, so I'll just read it again. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam mat parayana. In the translation, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me. Obeisances means respects, like bowing down. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. That's one sentence. 4 times already. Me, or me, my, me. Pretty emphatic. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. And not some, the conclusion is, he's saying, surely you'll come to me. And not like, surely you will merge into oneness, like a soup. You'll become a component, or, not even a component, because components, like individual, specific things. But you'll just become part of the soup. And we have nothing against soups. Actually, we love soups, if they're nice, but not in that sense. Okay, so now I'll read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Our spiritual master, this is Prabhupada, of course, here on the big seat in the corner there. And it's a little extensive purport. I'm sure it'll take a good 5 minutes or a little more. So please listen, tune in, try and get the idea. Actually, it's basically straightforward, but still, we got to pay our attention. So, right, Srila Prabhupada says, in this verse, it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means for being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. Sometimes unscrupulous commentators distort the meaning of what is clearly stated here, which is that all devotional service should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Unfortunately, unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Such commentators do not know that there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. He is absolute truth. His body, his mind, and he himself are one and absolute. And I could just mention momentarily, like generally or often we talk about there's me, I, me, and then when it comes to our body, we talk about my body. In other words, people may not understand what they're doing, but actually what they're doing, they're separating the body from themselves intellectually and my mind. Yeah, so, that's very common. My body, my head, my arm, my leg, all these types of things. My mind is disturbed. Yeah, or my mind is like this or that, and my body is sick. So there's this, it's like, I would say unconscious. They're not actually really thinking, right, what is this body? And what am I? And is it my body or is it me body? I never heard anyone say, me body. But my body, my arm, my leg, etc., that you get a lot of. Right, so, but, Prabhupada's making the point here that Krishna and his body and his mind, they are one. They're one. It's not like Krishna has his body like, a separate type of thing. But Krishna and his body are one, and Krishna and his mind. Because he's absolute, the absolute truth. So, let's see, as quoted by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami in his Anubhasya comments on Chaitanya Charitamrita, 5th chapter, Adi Lila, verses 41 to 48, Deha Dehi Vibedo Yam, Neshvare Vijate Quachit. This means that there is no difference in Krishna, the Supreme Lord, between himself and his body. But because the commentators do not know the science of Krishna, they hide Krishna and divide his personality from his mind or from his body. Although this is sheer ignorance of the science of Krishna, some men make profit out of misleading people. There are some who are demonic. They also think of Krishna, but enviously, just like King Kamsa, Krishna's uncle. He was also thinking of Krishna always, but he thought of Krishna as his enemy. He was always in anxiety, wondering when Krishna would come to kill him. That kind of thinking will not help us. One should be thinking of Krishna in devotional love. That is bhakti. Shri Shri Nitai Mayapur Chandra Ki Jai. So that is bhakti. Bhakti means devotion. Devotion, love, like that. One should cultivate the knowledge of Krishna continuously. What is that favorable cultivation? It is to learn from a bona fide teacher. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have several times explained that his body is not material, but is eternal, blissful knowledge. His body is eternal, unlike ours. I mean, we're all aging, and particularly as you get older, I'm looking here, I see a few older people. Yeah. And as you get older, particularly when you get like into your 70s, it can be a bit like a countdown, something like that. Really, because you realize, I remember when I was 40, and my father lived to be 41. And I thought, well, according to the law of averages or something like that, I'm about halfway. I got another 40 years. But when you get into your 70s, you realize it's not going to be that long. You're going to live a bit longer, okay. But not like when I was 40, and what to speak of when we were 20, just like little children sort of thing. All right, okay, let's see now. This kind of talk about Krishna will help one become a devotee. A devotee of Krishna, a servant of Krishna, a lover of Krishna, which, Krishna has said in the verse, become my devotee. Understanding Krishna otherwise from the wrong source will prove fruitless. Fruitless or even worse, It's one thing not getting any fruit. It's another thing getting some rotten fruit and just, like that. Yeah. So one should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form, the primal form of Krishna, with conviction in his heart that Krishna is the supreme. With conviction in his heart that Krishna is the supreme, he should engage himself in worship. There are hundreds of thousands of temples in India for the worship of Krishna, and devotional service is practiced there. When such practice is made, one has to offer obeisances to Krishna. One should lower his head before the deity and engage his mind, his body, his activities, everything in the service of Krishna. That will make one fully absorbed in Krishna without deviation. This will help one transfer to the Krishna Loka, means the eternal abode of Lord Krishna. One should not be deviated by unscrupulous commentators. One must engage in the 9 different processes of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting about Krishna. Pure devotional service is the highest achievement of human society. The 7th and 8th chapters of Bhagavad Gita have explained pure devotional service to the Lord that is free from speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and fruitive activities. Those who are not purely sanctified may be attracted by different features of the Lord, like the impersonal Brahmajyoti. So there is an impersonal aspect to Krishna that is his effulgence. Krishna has an effulgence. His body is effulgent. And even ourselves, we have effulgence. Look at Paramahansa here, you see? See? He's glowing. Can you see it? I'm serious. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with It's good. So we have effulgence. Shamananda Prabhu also. All right, sorry. But really, pardon me bringing it up, but having known a number of people who have died and seeing them like the day or a couple of days before they died, and then, when they have actually died like that day, then you see that the effulgence is gone. It's amazing. Sometimes it's even a bit difficult to recognize them. Yeah. So yeah. But Krishna has an effulgence, and his effulgence is so great because he's the Supreme Person. He's the absolute truth. His effulgence just spreads out for millions and zillions of miles. Yeah. So, okay, let's see. Impersonal Brahmajyoti and localized Paramatma, but a pure devotee directly takes to the service of the Supreme Lord. There's a beautiful poem about Krishna in which it is clearly stated that any person who's engaged in the worship of demigods is most unintelligent and cannot achieve at any time the supreme award of Krishna. The devotee in the beginning may sometimes fall from the standard, but still he should be considered superior to all other philosophers and yogis. One who always engages in Krishna consciousness should be understood to be a perfectly saintly person. His accidental, non-devotional activities will diminish, and he'll soon be situated without any doubt in complete perfection. The pure devotee has no actual chance to fall down because the Supreme Godhead personally takes care of his pure devotees. Therefore, the intelligent person should take directly to the process of Krishna consciousness and happily live in this material world. He will eventually receive the supreme award of Krishna. So, okay, I hope you're able to follow that. I realize it's deep, and you have to keep your wits about you and think about these things to really get it. I'm going to read the verse again. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mam evaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam mat parayana. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Okay, let me just say a couple of prayers and then we'll say some words about this. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyas kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right, so devotees and friends and family members. The main point, if you were listening carefully, you would see that, first of all, in the verse, Krishna talks about doing 4 things, 4 very specific things, and then the result of doing those 4 specific things. So first was, engage your mind, engage our minds, always in thinking of him. Second, become Krishna's devotee. Third, offer obeisances to Krishna or offer respects. That's basically the idea. And then fourth, worship in a formal sense, actually, like on the altar, worship me. So those are the 4 things. Think of Krishna, become his devotee, offer obeisances, respects to him, and worship him. And the result of that is, Krishna says, being completely absorbed in me, surely you'll come to me. Right. So there you go, devotees. We recommend that you do these things. Give it a shot. Have a go. Think of Krishna. How are you going to think of Krishna? You got to know something about him to think about him. If you don't, then maybe you can just think one thing about him all the time. But that's not really. Anyway, that wouldn't be as interesting as knowing all sorts of things about him and what he's like and what sort of person he is, his personality, how he looks, his actual appearance and features, you could say physical features, and then how he interacts, with everybody actually, but ultimately, particularly with his devotees. That's the most important thing. And then about his devotees, what are his devotees like? Those who are really doing these things and just really deeply into doing these things. What types of people are they? It's a big subject. It is not a small subject, but it's an extremely interesting subject because we're talking about very special person, not just like you or me, the ordinary ones. Seen one, seen a million of them. Just, you're just typical person in the street. No, someone most extremely extraordinary or just unique, just only one. And that's God. So what he's advising is that we should think about him. And like I said, you've got to get access to the information, which is not difficult. Just get the books and read the books. And it's a flood. You'll just become drowned in information. Just so much information. And then it's easy to think about him. And it won't just be boring. One of my godbrothers many years ago, one devotee, Kushakrata Prabhu, some of you might have heard of him. He passed away, unfortunately, but he was a great Sanskrit scholar. And he had not exactly, it wasn't a debate, but a little discussion with a person from another tradition, but also theistic tradition. And he said to the fellow from the other tradition that, tell me about God. Tell me something about God. And the fellow said, sure. God is just so great. Yes, fine, that's definitely true. He's so great. He's so wonderful. And he loves us all. And he's unlimited. And he's so great. And he's so wonderful. And he's unlimited. And he loves us all. And he's so great. Anyway, you get the idea. I mean, it's just a common problem that anyone would have if they have not availed themselves of the information. So, yeah, you just run out of things. And it's not really so much fun to just go around in a circle of that sort. Yeah. So, but Krishna, the thing is that there's so much information about him as a person, his appearance, his personality, his emotions, his likes and dislikes, and all these types of things. And then how he manifests all of this in his relationships and activities. It's a big subject, and you can go on literally for years without really repeating any of it. So we should engage our minds in thinking of Krishna. And, like I said, it's very interesting and it's a big subject. And it's just a really inspiring subject. Then we should become Krishna's devotee. Becoming his devotee means serving him, being devoted to a person, like loving a person means you've got to display your affection. You don't it's not like being an armchair philosopher. Sometimes, I've met people who were armchair communists, and like they're really into Karl Marx or whoever, these types of people, and they can go on about the philosophies of these people while sitting in their armchair, but they don't get out and try and spread the word. They're just armchair philosophers. So we should become, like, for example, just as an example, a young man feels that he loves a young lady. Yeah. So he tells her in a heartfelt way, you know what it's like, "Oh, I love you." Did that sound good? Convincing. "Oh, I love you so much. Oh my gosh." Then if she says, "All right, well, could you buy me," not something big like a car, but could you buy me a set of clothes? And he says, "Well, I don't know. I'm just sitting here thinking how I love you." So if people don't put it into action, then what does it mean? It's just, it's just something in the head, and there's no real depth to it. So becoming Krishna's devotee means becoming his servant and doing things for him and expressing your feelings in really tangible ways. Offering obeisances, bowing down, or just offering respect. Expressing respect, saying some respectful words like that. This is naturally there when you're thinking so much about him in all these different amazing and wonderful ways, and you're devoted to him, you have real affection and you're really expressing it in your activities, then you'll offer obeisances, you'll glorify him and worship him like here in a not just ceremonial way, but in a specific form of worship, which is only really shown to someone who's really on a higher level than we are. So like this. Anyway, you all can think about this. I know some of you are already doing this and have been doing for years. But some of you, I suspect, not so much. But really try and consider these things and give it a try and see what happens. And it'll be, anyway, my prediction is, at least if you really give it a good shot, your experience will be something most wonderful, and it'll really penetrate deeply into your being, into your heart and your mind and your feelings. So now, devotees and friends and family, I'm going to give a couple of examples. Now, the thing is, if you were listening to the purport as we read it, and if you were able to follow it and grasp what was being said, it's deep. It's one of those things, sometimes you got to listen to it a few times before you really get it, for it really sinks in. And I mean, even when it has sunk in, it can and it will sink in further, and it kind of keeps sinking in almost indefinitely. Well, actually indefinitely. But the point which was being emphasized in the purport particularly, I mean, a number of points were being emphasized, but the one particularly towards the end that Prabhupada was emphasizing was about serving, devotional service, that expression of appreciation, that he's so great, I should serve him. It's only natural that I should serve him because he's just so worthy of it that I have to do it. Otherwise, I'm just ungrateful and kind of dull. So, in regards to performing devotional service, doing practical activities for the pleasure of Krishna, of God, of course, there are many things you can do, even while you're sitting here right now, and hopefully you're listening. Are you listening? He's listening. That's good. At least we've got one. He's listening. And not just thinking about what's for prasadam. Oh. I'm sorry. You have defeated me philosophically. Okay, but devotional service. Now you're thinking of that. That's it. Yeah, right. Great. So it's natural, an example can be given, and I think it's a very good, clear example, is that I don't know if any of you have ever been in a house that was burning down, like in the middle of the night, and so you're sleeping, but then you realize, hey, wait a minute, something's going on here, and you see the house is burning down. I have once, just once, in Belfast. I was in Belfast in the 70s, and this house that we were staying in started burning down. And at first, it was like in the middle of the night. At first, sniff, sniff. What's that smell? My gosh, that's not the normal smell. Sounds like, is it smoke? Hey, it is smoke. Does that mean something is burning? Is the house burning? So then we got up to check it out. And first of all, the house is already burning, but first of all, we have to investigate and see what's going on. So we look around, what's happening? And then we see, it is burning, and we have to get out. So then you get out. It's a natural reaction. The first natural reaction, I would say, under those circumstances where initially it's not so clear, is the house on fire or not? The first natural reaction is, hey, let's go and have a look and see what is going on here. Natural reaction. But then when you see, wow, the house is actually burning down, then the natural reaction is to get out. Yeah. So similarly with Krishna, with God, when we understand him sufficiently, at least to some point, I'm not saying it's like the full degree to which one could understand him, but when you understand him to a sufficient degree, then you realize that I have to serve him. There's no real alternative. In the sense that it's so obvious that he's worthy of it. And any other type of interaction would not really be appropriate or fully appropriate. So natural reaction, we serve him and glorify him like that. So the thing is that service which we render to him, which can be like, here we are, I'm talking, that's my service, you're listening. Yes, he's still listening. That's your service. So these are services to the Lord. And in a little while, just in a little while, we will all stand up and we'll have some kirtan, some singing while the ceremony goes on the altar. And after that, take a wild guess. Anyway, then you're going to, that's right. No, he's tuned in. We need people who are tuned in. So then's prasadam. Just such nice vegetarian food. Right, so these are all, and even eating the food which has been offered to the Lord is a form of service. Then afterwards, someone can help clean up. That's also service. And so many things are service to the Lord. And service to the Lord is very effective in helping us spiritually, helping us come closer to him. Not just exactly come closer like we are now moving closer, but the thing is, when he sees it, he brings us closer. We often talk about going back to Godhead, like, going to Joburg or going to work or something. You are going. Here we're talking about when Krishna sees that you are really happy serving him and you actually appreciate him and you feel some, gratitude, even sort of obligation, but not so much obligation, but just inspiration that you want to do something for him, then Krishna becomes happy with you. So we talk about going back to Godhead, going back to the kingdom of God. But really what happens is, after a while, like, gosh, His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, shoo, what a week it's been, isn't it? My Lord. So anyway, Krishna, when someone has served him nicely for some time, then Krishna feels, because he's a person. He's not a little person like us. He's a very, extremely big person, but he's still a person. And he feels, when he sees what you're doing for him, how much you're trying and from the heart, sincerely, then Krishna reaches a point and he thinks, right, that's it. You are coming to me. And then you don't have to worry about, will I go back to Godhead? He just takes you. Really, that's how it works. That's how it works. And Jiva Goswami, one of our great previous spiritual masters, he said that even though Krishna is so great, he's like an unlimited ocean. But still, he never forgets even the smallest drop of service. Even just, something, almost nothing, but just something. He never forgets, ever. Yeah. So, I want to tell you a couple of stories that, just relate to you some incidents which are described, well, actually by the same Jiva Goswami, who I just referred to a moment ago. In his great essay, Bhakti Sandarbha, talking about devotional service, serving the Lord, how to do it, different types, different degrees, and the effects, the results of even his explanation, and I'll mention a few examples right now, is that devotional service is so, you could say it's so powerful, but Krishna is so deeply invested in it that even when people, or even when animals in some cases, do it, and they're not thinking, I am serving Krishna. They're not even aware, just animals there, whatever, kind of on automatic pilot or something like that. But somehow they do something which pleases Krishna. And Krishna accepts it and reciprocates. So here we go. Listen to this. This first one, little story I'll tell you. This appears, if you've got Prabhupada's books and lectures and things on computer, Vedabase, if you've got that, you can look this up and read it for yourself. Srila Prabhupada gives one lecture, I think it's just one, on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 40. That's the verse in which Krishna says that any progress you make in serving Krishna, even if you get into difficulty after a while, but the progress you made will never be lost. No loss, no diminution, no reduction. So in the lecture, right pretty much at the beginning, Prabhupada gives an example, which is from Jiva Goswami actually, from Bhakti Sandarbha. And would you believe, devotees, you're sitting down, that's good. You might need to fasten your seatbelts. But it's the story of a mouse. Seriously, a mouse. was living in a temple in India, way back in the old days before electricity. And in that temple, they used oil lamps to just light everything up, including the altar area itself. So, and this mouse, he would, move around looking for food, of course. And sometimes there'd be some prasadam, something would get dropped, and he'd get something to eat. But other times, there wasn't anything to eat. So what he did, the oil lamps were on stands, and maybe some a meter or two or whatever tall, different stands, and then on the top is a bowl of oil and a wick, and they light the wick and it draws the oil, and the oil lamp, if it's managed a bit, it can burn for hours. Yeah. So this mouse sometimes would climb up the stand, one of the stands, and somehow or other get around to the bowl and drink some of the oil. So, devotees, I'm sort of sorry to say, but one day, you know what happened? The mouse slipped into the oil and drowned. Couldn't get out. Too slippery. That was it. But as he slipped in, his nose hit the end of the wick and moved the wick. And, if you've had experience with oil lamps, which you might not have, you got to every now and then adjust the wick. You got to do it. Otherwise, it just burns the wick and it finishes, quickly. But if you adjust the wick, move it every now and then, like we said, it can burn for hours. So he fell in, he slipped in, his nose hit the end of the wick, and the wick got moved, and it burnt longer for the deity, because it was right in front of the deity. So in other words, he unknowingly, and certainly it wasn't his desire to serve the Lord, he just wanted to get something to eat. But effectively, he did some service. And don't forget, Prabhupada is telling the story, and you can look it up. And it's also in Bhakti Sandarbha. So, take a guess, devotees, take a wild guess. What happened to the mouse? Because he just passed away. He went back to the kingdom of God because he did some service. Unknowingly, but it was service for the deity. So Prabhupada tells that story to illustrate this point from Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 40 about how any effort in devotional service, you always get a great result. And even if you go off the rails later, but still the result you accumulated before, it stays with you. And it'll kick in, so to speak, later on. Here's another one. And you got your safety belts fastened because you'll need it. There was a bird flying around, hanging out by a temple of Vishnu, the Supreme Lord. One day a hunter came with a group of dogs and shot the bird. And the bird fell out of the tree right next to the temple, but wasn't dead. He's sort of in the process. Yeah. And the hunter had his dogs, so the dogs came racing out. Who's going to get the bird first? It's a competition. And one dog got the bird first, And the other dogs then were chasing behind that first dog to try and get the bird off him. And the dogs went around the temple 3 times. In the process, right at the end of the 3rd time, the bird actually died. So what happened to the bird? He went back to the kingdom of God because he was circumambulating the temple. He went around the temple 3 times. And yeah. So, excuse me if it sounds a little far-fetched, but, these are things coming from extremely authoritative persons, extremely authoritative. Here's another one. Can you handle it? How are you managing? Are you all right? I've got 2 more. There's more than 2, but I'll tell you 2 more. There was a pickpocket, and he was looking for a good spot to do his thing. And, what he needs, I've never been a pickpocket. No kidding. Really. So he's looking for a crowded place, lots of people, movement, pushing, shoving, that sort of thing, because then he can pick people's pockets. But, because they're being pushed from different sides, they're not going to notice. So what did he do, devotees? He went to the Hare Krishna temple on Sunday. Anyway, just watch your pockets, by the way. So he did. But, he went to some big temple where there's like thousands of people and it's just busy for hours every day. And he thought, wow, he was doing well. Business was booming. And he thought, this is good. I got to set myself up here. So what he did, he chose one side, which was a good area. People liked coming through there. And he was going to sit down there. And that was going to be his spot. So he cleaned it. Yeah, that part of the temple. Just a small area. Maybe 5 square meters or something. And he'd sit down and wait there. And when people would come, they'd pass through there and he would pick their pockets. So, and he did this, he cleaned it every day. Every day for a long time until finally he died. So what happened to him? Go on, take a guess. He went back to the kingdom of God because he was cleaning the temple. Yeah. And here's another one, last one for today. Last one. And this is from Srila Jiva Goswami. There was a drunkard living in a village. He was the local sort of no good fellow. And he had a girlfriend who was also a drunkard. So they were a team and they would regularly cause disturbance in the village. And the village people, they're, pious people, they're tolerating this couple. Oh gosh, it's them again. But after a while, it got too much. They kicked them out of town. They just ran them out of town. Just get out and don't come back. So off they went, the drunkard and his drunk girlfriend. So they're walking out and down the road and along. And then night was falling. So, gosh, we're going to need some shelter for the night. They found an old, disused, deserted temple. just standing there, not in good condition. So they went in there. And that night, well, they drank and they fought and they argued and shouted at each other and hit each other and all that sort of thing. The entire night till the next morning. Right. So now, Srila Jiva Goswami explains, actually it's from Nrsimha Purana, that temple was a disused temple of Lord Nrsingadev. That night was Nrsimha Chaturdasi. They stayed up. They didn't eat anything, they just drank. But anyway, they ate nothing the whole night. The whole night. So they fasted the whole night. And you know what happened, devotees? In his next life, the drunkard became Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing, what can happen. And even I could just mention, if you're familiar with the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Ajamil, that he was another degraded person, just a hopeless kind of useless type of person. But right at the end of his life, he happened to chant a name of the Lord a few times. And on the basis of that, he was liberated. So the Bhagavatam says there that this is what happened with Ajamil, despite the condition he was in, but somehow he chanted the names of the Lord. And he was liberated. And so then it's Shukadev Goswami speaking, and he says, so how can there be any doubt that someone who is regularly chanting the holy names of the Lord from the heart, how can there be any doubt that they're going to go back to the kingdom of God? Because devotional service performed even unknowingly or in some sort of bad state, it still has very remarkable effects. Really remarkable. So that's food for thought for all of you, for all of us. Now I think, I have. That means I've gone over time. So, okay, all right. So there's some food for thought. I mean, I got some other things here, but some other time. So, okay, now, should I ask? Listen, I was going to ask, I thought you were tuned in telepathically. But has anyone got it? Yes, sir. Oh, yes.
You were so nicely emphasizing the importance of doing some devotional service. So let's say I'm a beginner. I've just come across the Hare Krishna movement. I'm kind of listening to a class. I should do something. Can you recommend what should one do if one's a beginner? How should one start this process of devotional service?
Okay, that's a very good question. How could someone who's really new to it all start doing some service? Well, I can tell you, let me just for the sake of it, tell you how I started. I started the first day I had visited a temple. I had thought of going some time before, but I didn't. But anyway, I did eventually. And it was in London, the temple in central London. So there I was, first day there, brand new, interested. didn't know, up from down or anything about Krishna consciousness. I mean, hardly. But I spent some time there. I was there for some hours. And first day, and one of the devotees comes up to me and said, would you mind doing something to help? And I thought, oh, really? I'm a guest, But I was an easygoing guy. So I said, yeah, okay. And he said, well, we need someone to clean the men's toilets. And I thought, really? It's my first day visiting a temple. I mean, isn't this like beyond the deep end? But I'm an easygoing guy. I said, yeah, all right, then why not? And I did. I cleaned the men's toilets in Berry Place. Did you go to Berry Place? Anyway, Berry Place, in late 72. And there I am. I'll be honest, I never cleaned a toilet before in my life, ever. But I did. And within 2 minutes, I was feeling so good. Any idea like, is this how you treat guests around here, had gone completely. And I was just feeling wow, inspired, excited, and happy. And I had actually retired. I was 21. I'm not your ordinary run-of-the-mill character. But I had retired as far as I was concerned. I was not going to work again. So then I was thinking, wow, yeah, I decided that I'm not going to work again. But working for Krishna, this is nice. I like this. I can do this. Yeah. But what I'd suggest, if someone just coming first time, or, they haven't been many times, but they're sort of tuning in a bit and they get the idea, oh yeah, service. You're meant to do service. It revolves around doing some service for Krishna. So then what you should do is approach the seniors, the management, and ask them, could I do something to help, please? Where are they? Oh, look, there they are. There's one of them. Haribol. Just report to her, and she will just help you out with some nice service. And don't speculate. Let me tell you one sort of way out and kind of crazy situation which happened once in Bhaktivedanta Manor, just outside London, which I witnessed. There was the class like this, but one morning, not on Sunday. So, there's a number of devotees gathered and the lecture goes on, then it finishes, we all get up. There was one young fellow there, like early 20s or something, kind of hippie type. And there's a little side room, kind of like this one here, little side room. This boy disappeared into the side room and came out about 1 minute later, holding a rose, that was all he was wearing, was the rose. No kidding. And of course we grabbed him and said, wait a minute, and dressed him. And I said, what on earth were you doing? And he said, well, God told me to come before him as I am and offer him a rose. Seriously, this is actually what happened. So I did. So, we shouldn't speculate, But there are people around who are organizing things, and they can consider who are you, and what might be suitable, and give you someone to like to associate with while you do the service. Yeah, I remember one of my earlier services, I drove Hari Vilas, I'm sure you know Hari Vilas, to Dover to take the boat to France. And he talked to me non-stop from central London to Dover about Prabhupada. I tell you what, it was just really nice. Yeah. And one thing he told me which really struck me, he said, in Krishna consciousness, there's only one rule. And I thought, really? They've been telling me all these different rules about even how to brush my teeth and, just really some basic things. He said, no, only one rule. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. I'm going to do that and not worry about the other rules. But I found out that the other rules also, they do help out. Hare Krishna. Okay. Any other comment or question? Oh, sorry. Yes, Madhavi Prabhu.
I was just going to mention that at one time we had a young boy that came to the temple, a clean-cut young boy, and he was practicing yoga, and he wanted to come and stay in the temple, but he wanted to do Mona.
Oh,
He wanted to do Mona for 2 days.
silence.
That he would follow the program, but he didn't want to speak to him. So after the 2 days, we were having an ISKCON, and the devotees were mentioning how to overcome difficulties in devotional service. And he just popped up and said, what's the problem? What's the problem? Krishna is here, Krishna is everywhere. Why is everyone here in so much anxiety? And I told him, well, it's different when you try to do something for Krishna. If you're just sitting there and doing nothing and observing, that's easy. But if you appreciate Krishna and you want to love Krishna, then you've got to do something. And that changes the whole thing. It's not the same kind of anxiety that devotees may be going through, because it's anxiety to perform some pleasing service.
Thank you. Very good. Prabhupada was asked once, do you have any anxieties? And Prabhupada said, no, I have no anxieties. Then he said, I have one anxiety. My only anxiety is, what is in Krishna's lunchbox? Other than that, life is good. Okay, everyone, thank you for your attention. And now what are we going to do? Tell me. We're going to do Guru